What is game? Is as difficult to answer as what is art? There are millions of definitions, millions of philosophies, and if you ask 10 game designers what a game is, you will probably get 15 different answers. For me, art and games are connected since they share a definition. The most simple definition of art is communication with the goal to entertain. Anything beyond that makes the definition complicated and seeks to exclude certain types of art. Entertainment in this case meaning that the intent is to provoke a reaction from an agent. The reaction itself doesn't need to be positive, neutral, or negative. It also doesn't need to be triggered, it just needs to be intended by the creator of the art. Art can be, of course, auditorial, visual, haptic, olfaction, or all of the above. Since this is a gaming channel, we are clearly focusing on the question of what a game is, which is, by the way, a stupid name. I call them digital games or virtual games, because video games are not only made out of videos. There are FMVs, of course, but that is a whole other topic, so let's get back on track. Video games can only be experienced with a specific device like a PC or a console or handhelds. It gives art, of course, a lot of room, but also some big restrictions. There's a whole technical side of video games that can't be overlooked. At the end of the day, games are computer software made out of thousands of lines of code, and there are certain things that most games should adhere to. One of the things I really care about are app configurations, or in short, menus. Of course, you can make games without menus, and those who watch any of my reviews know that I absolutely hate when video games don't give me the option to change my resolution, window mode, and sounds, because these things actually don't influence the game as much and are there to serve the agent with whatever experience they prefer. Imagine having a book that is written in toilet paper and Wingdings and not having a choice to buy it binded and in the Latin alphabet. Now, can this book be entertaining? Yes, of course it can. But if frustration from the agent was not necessarily intended, then probably printing books on toilet paper and Wingdings is not a good idea. Not to say that writing books on toilet paper and Wingdings wouldn't be pretty cool. Something like Goat Simulator is probably a good example of a game written on toilet paper and Wingdings. Glitches in Goat Simulator, glitches are akin to misprints in books, are mostly intended, and the entertainment derived from Goat Simulator comes from the absurd things that happen on screen once the code doesn't know how to compute what is happening in the background. There are also some games that are usually considered art, but not in a positive way, which brings us to walking simulators. Walking simulators are notoriously discarded and not seen as games, and despite my personal feelings towards them, by the very definition of art in video games, they are video games. The agent input might consist of only pressing W, but it is clearly trying to entertain, and since it's digital, it's a game. And at this point you might be asking why I defined those words and what the fuck I'm actually trying to say. You see, I have 3 different games on my hand: Night Fisherman, Island on Places, and Art School, written with a Q because we're super cool. Normally, I wouldn't be able to talk about those games in length since they are short and usually nobody cares about them, but by putting them in a video to underline my point, they might get more attention. The first time I played Night Fisherman, I wasn't expecting much. As you all know, I'm a sucker for simplistic styles that aren't simple at all to make. Gosh, I bought a game just because it looked cool, okay? Not in the sense of graphical fidelity, just because it looked cool. There's a difference, okay? The premise of the game wasn't much. Short story about night fishermen on the sea, but then I just played it. The game is bare bones. No starting menu, no fancy UI, no configuration, nothing. Just the dev's name and the name of the game. You have a moving background, the fisherman, and the text at the bottom. The text sets the scene and gives you your first choice. Use live bait or boiled bait. The choice is meaningless. Whatever you choose will have no impact on the story. Should you choose to use the live bait though, the game tells you that the fisherman doesn't want to use it. The fisherman clearly cares about life even though it's an insect. Why is the fisherman fishing then when it's not able to kill anything? Well, maybe he isn't a fisherman at all, who knows. Soon another boat approaches. You don't know who it is, but the fisherman knows. His name is Churchill and he's a border patrol man. You two talk about Churchill's job and casually talk about getting rid of refugees. Churchill is overtly xenophobic, on the one hand comparing his people, the Brits, to lions who despise menial labor but are so strong that they can force others to work for them, and on the other hand comparing immigrants to vermin that need to be exterminated. Surprise, surprise, you are a smuggler, and you're currently smuggling a refugee child. It doesn't matter what answers you give to Churchill, he knows that you are smuggling, and he gives you a choice. The only choice that matters in the game. Grab the safety line he throws at you, or die with the kid. Of course, I chose to protect the kid, I'm not a fucking monster. Churchill takes aim, bam, cutscene. I give the kid my last words, and the game ends. The first time I played this game, I was on edge, and I didn't even notice it. Every line of dialogue, every choice, however meaningless it was, drove me further and further towards the edge. And when that final shot came, and the game ended, the only thing I could hear was my heart beating. What the actual fuck just happened? Why did that trigger me? I promptly started a second playthrough to see if anything changes depending on decisions and choose this time to save myself. But at this point, the magic was gone. It still triggered a similar response, but now I wasn't on edge anymore. I felt a little bit ashamed. Why did I let the kid die? What the fuck was wrong with me? Why did I need to see that? I don't know. Most people wouldn't consider Night Fisherman a game. And more of a choose-your-own-adventure book with a unique mechanic where you can basically set your own camera. But is Night Fisherman a game? Yes, Night Fisherman is clearly a game, and it's clearly art. It's digital, it needs an agent, and its intention is to entertain. And in my specific case, it did exactly that. At least for the first time I played the game, it triggered an emotional response from me. Island Non-Places is not a game. It's something that most people would say. And I want to be clear from the start, if you're looking for a game with the maximum interaction, you won't find one here. The player input consists of pretty much listening, spotting the glowing thing, and clicking on it. How fast you progress and how much you get out of it depends on you, but the input for all players is pretty much the same. But how do you experience INP? Most of the time, you have a few objects in the middle of a foggy void surrounded by familiar sounds. For example, a bus stop will have people shuffling around and car noises in the background. An office will have people mumbling, signals going off, and paper shoveling. And at a park, we have people talking and laughing, but you will never see any human. Everything is made of simple shapes and colors that heavily lean on neon, but are never aggressive enough that it's difficult to look at. The player can also change the perspective of the scene, and depending on where the camera is, sounds will change, so dynamic sounds. INP is truly a relaxed experience, but I could not shake the feeling that there was something lurking under the hood. I thought about how we're basically following someone's day, bus stop, park, coffee place, home. Maybe it's supposed to be a visual retelling of someone's day. Maybe there's a hidden message there. But then I realized, why not just enjoy it? Sometimes it's okay to just have audiovisual stimuli. Carl Burton, the creator, is pretty much a visual artist. He makes pleasant shapes and colors, and maybe that's all there is to it. And even though the game can also just not work sometimes, for me it stopped working at the last stage, the installation is not something you see every day. It could have used the medium a little bit more, giving the player the freedom to move the camera even more, or even implementing some puzzle elements. But I enjoyed the installation in general. The technical hiccup at the last stage did turn the enjoyment into a little bit of frustration and hate, but generally speaking, it was a pleasant experience, and I even had to smile a few times. What are video games? Well, Island Non-Places is a video game. It's digital, it needs an agent, and its intention is probably to entertain to a certain extent. And in my specific case, it made me smile, it made me happy, and it made me frustrated. So I guess, job done. Is Paint a game? It's digital. It needs an agent, but there's no intent to entertain, right? You know, Paint doesn't want to entertain you. Paint is a device that you can use to manipulate pictures. The intention of Paint is not to entertain you. Now, you throw a little of story and the intent of entertainment, and you get a game. And that game is called Art School with Q. You are freshmen at the prestigious art school. At this school, you get assignments from the only teacher at the school, a sentient Q, a super intelligent AI that will judge your art on an objective basis. It was made by scientists, so trust me. Aside from the banger soundtrack, the cotton candy color scheme, and tongue-in-cheek nature of the in-game dialogue, this is basically Paint wrapped in a digital world. You wander around in this dreamlike campus with dadaistic buildings and a trusty draw pad to finish your assignments. Once you draw your stuff, you literally jump off the campus or walk into a building, and the AI judges your art objectively, of course. The whole game plays on the idea that whatever you make will be judged objectively, but in reality it's just random. You could literally just draw the same thing over and over, and Q would judge you differently every time. Now, objectivity and subjectivity is a whole other topic that I don't want to talk about it now, but in the game's context, it makes sense that objectivity is in quotation marks, but we're not here to talk about that. So, was Art School a game if it was just Paint in some random world? Well, to the question, what is a game? Art School just answers yes. And how meta, talking about arts and games while playing a game that comments on the very nature of art by implementing it into a video game. You know, after all I've said, you could also just say, funny video game goes brrrr.